I'm joined by Senator John McCAIN. Senator, thank you very much. Let's talk about the nuclear deal in the context of Arab leaders snubbing the president. They just announced this meeting with King Salman, the Saudi king, on Friday, and now he's not coming.
Well, Andrea, I think it's an indicator of the lack of confidence that the Saudis and others have. I understand 2 of the 6 countries that were invited are indeed sending their leaders, #1 leaders, and because they do not see a way to be satisfied with the situation when it's clear that Iranian nuclear deal is the #1 priority, and this administration feels that they can somehow make agreements with Iran throughout the region when these countries view Iran as a direct threat. And that certainly is the case when you look at Iranian aggression in 4 different countries that has destabilized them and given the Iranians a lead role.
Isn't it even more awkward in that John Kerry was just in Riyadh meeting with the king? So how did the White House miss the signals that the king, in fact, was not coming?
Look, I have great respect for John Kerry, but I've noticed in his tenure here in the Senate, but also as Secretary of State, that he sometimes interprets things as he wants them to be rather than what they really are, whether it be convening 40 nations in Geneva to arrange the departure of Bashar Assad from Syria, as you might recall he did, the Palestinian-Israeli failed peace talks, and of course there's other examples of it, particularly the failure to restrain Vladimir Putin and his continued aggression in Ukraine.
Let's see what happens when Kerry goes this week to Russia, to Moscow, and meets with Putin. Let me ask you about the ISIS threats, social media, the warnings, and the increased security levels at military bases around our country. How concerned should we be about lone wolves inspired through social media, the aggressive social media, and very effective, apparently, of ISIS and other groups?
Well, Andrea, you can rely on the opinion of people like the director of the FBI and Mike Morrell, who recently deputy head of the CIA, and others, that it is a very serious threat. It is a recruitment tool that ISIS and these radical organizations are using the internet in a most effective fashion. I don't know how many there are, but I do know that as long as you have a situation where they're able to penetrate into the consciousness of a lot of these young people, which use this as their only means of communication and receiving information, that it's a serious long-term problem. And by the way, one of the aspects of this challenge we should be really focusing on is having the Muslim clerics condemn ISIS as being the perversion of Islam that they are. We need to have a lot more of that.
And finally, I wanted to ask you by an article that in fact, NBC has not independently corroborated. The White House, the Pentagon are knocking it down, but Cy Hirsch, former, well-known investigative reporter in a London newspaper, is claiming that the raid on Osama bin Laden, the takedown, was not as described by this administration. That in fact the Pakistanis were involved in it, that they were aware of it, that they helped, that they, deliberately didn't marshal their air defenses. Do you know anything that would contradict the official version of this so profoundly as Cy Hirsch's story? I should also add that the White House Ned Price from the NSC has said today there are too many inaccuracies and baseless assertions in this piece, in fact, to check each one out. Nevertheless, the notion that the operation that killed Osama bin Laden was anything but a unilateral U.S. mission is patently false. As we said at the time, knowledge of this operation was confined to a very small circle of senior U.S. officials. The president decided early on not to inform any other government, including the Pakistani government, which was not notified until after the raid had occurred. We had been and continue to be partners with Pakistan in our joint effort to destroy al-Qaeda, but this was a U.S. operation through and through. Do you have any indication from your briefings or otherwise, as chairman of Armed Services, that SEAL Team 6 didn't take down Osama bin Laden?
Andrea, you put me down on the side of the statement made by the administration. I simply have never heard of anything like this, and I've been briefed several times. This is a great success on the part of the administration and something that we all admire the president's decision to do. So I'm not in the business of knocking it down. I'm going to have a lot more persuasive information before I would believe that. And I cannot diminish the fact that the president and his team did the right thing here. And I regret deeply that we haven't done more to get the doctor out. But the fact is the operation was a success, and I think it's going to take a lot more information before we diminish it.
The doctor, of course, who was a CIA asset and went to the house in Abbottabad on a false mission, a vaccination mission, to try to get DNA to try to establish some more credible proof that in fact was Osama bin Laden's hideout. What would be the Pakistani government's motivation to try to spin this tale, if it is a spun tale?
Well, you know, I admire the Pakistani government, but look, a lot of strange things and theories and comments have come out. But if I were in the president's shoes at that particular time, I believe that there was so much leakage within the Pakistani government that to err on the side of caution and carry out the operation themselves was the right thing to do, and I think that's what the president did. With all due respect to Pakistani sovereignty, this is the man who was responsible for the murder of thousands of Americans.
John McCain, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Andrea.